Welcome, my prince. I see your brow is clouded today. Yes, my boy, I have heard the news. War yet again looms with the dragon to our east. Cursed Nemedia, ever have they plagued our great empire. It has been the failing of your father's reign that he has yet to conquer that wretched place. I should not allow my anger to twist my perspective. I apologize, my prince. These are trying times. Come, allow me to make amends. I shall tell you what I know of Nemedia. Perhaps it will come to serve you well when you ascend to the throne. In truth, I spoke in haste earlier. Nemedia is indeed a wretched rival to our own fair Aquilonia, but we should give credit where credit is due. It is a fatal error to underestimate one's enemies, after all. Nemedia's history is as old and steeped in tradition as our own, and some say it is even older still. I doubt this claim, but whether it is true or not, we can rest assured that Nemedia is one of the oldest of the Hybori nations. It formed when that ancient race of people swept down out of the north and cast down the Acaronian Empire. The Hybori entered the country, and there they found ancient ruins from a culture that some say even predated Fel Acheron itself. They moved into many of the ruins left by this mysterious culture, and indeed the Nemedians took it as their own, adopted heritage. They took on that bygone culture's architecture, their ways of fighting, their myths. Even the famed Nemedian symbol, the red dragon, was taken from the past. The Nemedians built a nation using ancient tomes found within the ruins, hoping to reclaim once lost glory. Some say that this lost ancient culture was ancient Valusia itself, but I disagree. I find it more likely that much of what the Nemedians stole, they stole from hated Acheron in the form of plunder. It could even have been the Stygians. The Stygian Empire was once vast indeed, flourishing off the power of Acheron, and there is some evidence within the archaeological record to suggest that Nemedia marked the far northern border of their control. Whoever left the ruins scattered across the country, what matters is that even today, Nemedia is a renowned center of scholarship and lore. Students travel from all over the world to study beneath the Nemedian sages and to explore the ancient mysteries. I myself have traveled there to learn and to read. Nemedian culture is considered by some to be the beating heart of Hyboria, even above fair Aquilonia. You and I know better, my prince. We must forgive the misconceptions of others. How are they to know that the Nemedian so-called greatness was taken from another age? Regardless, the Nemedians themselves are fiercely prideful of their national identity. A Nemedian would always be the first to espouse Nemedian greatness. The land of Nemedia is pristine, fertile, if wild. The border range dominates on the western border of the country, and it separates Nemedia from our own Aquilonia. The mountains of the border range are tall and treacherous, and there are perhaps half a dozen safe passes through them. As one passes east of the border range, one crosses vast, fertile plains. There is a measure of uninhabited land that is kept barren by the frequent wars between our two peoples, but beyond this no man's land are endless leagues of fertile farmland. The land itself is watered by the Yellow River, which marks Nemedian's eastern border, the Red River, and the smaller Ril and Urlab rivers. These great arteries drain into Nemedia's interior or into the northern basin. There, along Nemedia's northern border, lies the great salt marsh that stretches across the border into the lawless border kingdoms. Some call this place the Varakil Marshes, though in my experience the locals reserve this name for the northeasternmost portion of the swamp. The Yellow River runs north, and as I said, is the eastern border of the country. Along this river lies the Darkwood Forest, an unbroken chain of dark, foreboding pine that stretches into Brithunia. Tales speak of vampires, satyrs, and far worse roaming those thick woods. The south of the country is bound by the Carpash Mountains, which separate Nemedia from Ophir and Corinthia. The hillsides in the south are extremely fertile, and orchards and vineyards dominate the landscape. Nemedian wine is famous across Hyboria, a luxurious export even as far away as Kitai. The Road of Kings passes through the southern edge of the border range and runs through a large measure of Nemedia, bringing with it prosperity and trade from across the continent. Indeed, Nemedia sits near the center of Hyboria, just as Aquilonia does, and this makes it something of a crossroads. One can be sure to meet all kinds while traversing the country. The Nemedians themselves are a hardy folk. They are tall, strong, with square features and brown hair. They are a sophisticated people, even decadent at times, and you can be sure that they will carry themselves with an air of superiority. Nemedians are quick to temper and fickle in friendship. You can be sure that this makes diplomacy with them a most trying affair, my prince. It takes a great deal of patience to endure the Nemedians' constant bickering and verbal jabs. They take offense at the slightest provocation, which has caused talks between our two nations to break down on more than one occasion. Nemedians drink deeply. They speak their mind. They do not bow or scrape to get by. They are hard workers, studious learners. You can be sure that once a Nemedian has set their mind to a task, it will be done, and usually in a more efficient manner than you could have ever hoped for. They forge stout weapons and wear armor of linked chainmail, scale mail, and hardened leather. The Nemedians are fierce enemies on the battlefield. They utilize tactics learned from ancient war books plundered from the ruins they have claimed as their own. They favor defensive tactics, and their shield wall is legendary across Hyboria as nigh unbreakable. Many an invading enemy have shattered themselves against the Nemedian line. They favor light cavalry, capable, but nowhere near as potent as our own Portanian knights. You should remember this, my prince. War looms on the horizon, and it surely will again under your reign. The dragon has never been conquered by our armies, and they have tried to conquer us more than once. Knowledge of these strategies could mean the difference one day. You should know as well that the Nemedians never fight alone. They are wise enough to know that one's strength can lie in one's allies, and they have historically been the driving force of an alliance between Nemedia, Zamora, and Ophir. These three nations have acted as a bulwark against our power for centuries, but the Nemedians are not beyond looking past their traditional allies for help in their wars against us. They have more than once turned to Hyperborean mercenaries to fight their battles for them, and your father has had to deal with Nemedian conniving in Koth for some time. Koth is historically one of our tributaries, but they have long chafed under our yoke. You must remember these things, my boy, if you are to make a great king. The Nemedians are ruled by a king as well. This king divides the land between barons, counts, and dukes, who serve the monarch directly in a system of feudalism that you would recognize. The king is the ultimate authority in the nation, and his word is law. The current king is King Nemed. He has struggled to recover from the scandal of his nation's involvement with the foul lich Zol Tatun, a tale you have heard me mention before. Several Nemedian nobles revived the foul creature and planned to use him to seize the thrones of both Aquilonia and Nemedia for their own. Their plan worked at first, and your father was ousted from the throne. He escaped the clutches of his enemies and went in search of the fabled heart of Ahriman in order to defeat Zol Tatun forever. Your father, of course, succeeded. Nemedia offered a rare apology for the affair, and King Nemed even thanked your father for helping to preserve his throne. It was hoped that the affair would be the basis for a new diplomatic relationship between our nations, but things have not proceeded amicably. There have been rumors of Hyrcanian aggression in the east. People say that King Nemed wishes to re-cement the alliance between Nemedia, Zamora, and Ophir by inflaming their fear and rage against outside enemies. Perhaps This is why they now press against our borders. Nemedia is home to dozens of smaller towns and villages, which house millions of people, but 3 of these cities stand apart from the rest as major pillars of civilization. I made sure to visit each during my long Hyborian sojourn so long ago. Belverus is the nation's capital, and by far the most impressive city in the nation. Indeed, it is one of the most impressive cities in all of Hyboria. The city lies spread across the steep slope of a hill, and it can be seen from miles away. Tall spires and stout buildings cover the hillside and poke above the city's walls. Belverus is guarded by a massive 50-foot wall that is built directly into the hillside, giving the defenders an impressive vantage. The markets of Belverus are well serviced by the Road of Kings, just as our own fair capital. Almost any kind of good from across Hyboria can be found in the merchant stalls of Belverus, even from places as far away as Vendya and Kitai. Parts of the hillside are still covered in the ancient ruins of the civilization that came before, and there are dozens of archaeological digs underway at any given time, hoping to discover lost, forgotten secrets. The city is stuffed to the gills with museums that showcase relics found in these ruins. The royal district sits atop the hillside, and it is home to the city's most wealthy and influential. The royal palace resides here, cut partially into the hill and surrounded by its own high walls. It is a stout citadel in its own right. Belverus has one more claim to fame, as it were. It is the birthplace of the cult of Mitra. Indeed, Mitra is the dominant religion in Nemedia, just as it is in Aquilonia. The Temple of Mitra in Belverus is the largest building in the city. It was found completely intact and required no repairs to utilize. The walls gleam white and the roof shines in solid gold. In the daytime, it can be difficult to look at. It shines so brightly in the sun. The temple is the seat of the cult of Mitra, the place from which it governs its affair across all of Hyboria. New Malia is the second greatest city in Nemedia. It sits near to the Road of Kings on the border with Corinthia and is a favored stop for merchants traveling to Aquilonia up from the south. New Malia is guarded by the famed Paulian Way gates, a pair of ornate pillars placed on either side of the road. The gate has no roof, but it depicts the greatness of Nemedia to newcomers from the wider world in artistic splendor. The city is home to Callian Publico's temple, an old temple converted to a museum, which is famous throughout central Hyboria. Your father once visited Callian Publico's, though. He was embroiled in a murder investigation that drew him into Stygian politics at the time. Perhaps you should ask him about the affair, my prince. Numalia is also famous as a sporting center. The Arcadium is a large open forum where one can go to engage in sporting activity of all kinds. There are games of dice and other games of chance, races, feats of physical endurance and strength, and far more. There are even pit fights between gladiators that take place in an area known as the Pits, near to the Arcadium. Many in Nemedia would openly call such fights barbaric relics of an ancient past, and yet this does not stop them from flocking to the games en masse. Numalia is hardly more lively than it is during the time of a pit fight. The population of the city is far more cosmopolitan than anywhere else in Nemedia. Its location close to the border and to the Road of Kings ensures a steady flow of outsiders, many of whom become so enraptured by the Nemedian way of life that they decide to stay on and build new lives. Hanumar is the smallest of the major cities in Nemedia, but it is no less important for that. It sits in the northern reaches of the country, near to the Varikil marshes. Hanumar has no wall of its own, and instead it relies on regular patrols in all directions to attend to its defense. Indeed, Hanumar is home to a mercenary company known as the Harrowers, who historically have kept the city safe by ranging far and wide, combating raiders. The Harrowers even regularly push over the border into the border kingdoms, patrolling that lawless land to ensure marauders stay away from Nemedia. This could prove potentially useful, my prince. The Harrows are fiercely loyal to Nemedia, but they are mercenaries who fight for coin. Any man who can be bought has a price. Remember this when you ascend to the throne, my prince. Hanumar is also home to gladiatorial fights, and it contains the largest fighting pit in the whole country, simply dubbed the Arena. People come from far and wide to see fights in the arena, or to test their own mettle by risking their blood on the sand. Indeed, the arena is the largest fighting pit in all of the Western nations, and people travel from as far away as Zingara or Zamora to participate in matches. Hanumar has exceptionally soft, fertile soil, and as such it also plays host to many vineyards, much like the Nemedian South. Indeed, Hanumar is the location of the royal vineyards, and the king visits yearly in order to pronounce the grapes ready to pick. The king's arrival to Hanumar is celebrated with a festival called the Feast of Grapes, during which the wine flows freely. It is worth noting, the cult of Mitra is not the only religion practiced in Nemedia, even if it is the seat of the cult's power. The cult of the Ibis also exists, an ancient relic from the days when Stygian borders stretched so far north. Hanumar was the northernmost edge of those borders, and it is home to the Temple of the Ibis. The cult of the Ibis worship the Ibis, who is the celestial enemy of the Stygian snake god Set. The cult of the Ibis opposes Set even to this day. The temple is a large, pyramidal structure that sits in the western portion of Hanumar. The high priest there is a sorcerer by the name of Calanthes, an ancient, learned man who can command vast magical power. Calanthes has aided your father in his adventures once before, and he is an important figure in the nation of Nemedia, one who commands vast influence. The cult of the Ibis holds knowledge as sacred, and they often compete directly with the Temple of Mira in Belverus in order to explore the ancient ruins scattered across the country. Finally, on the north edge of Hanumar sits an ancient broken wall. The northern plain beyond this wall is an ancient, vast killing field. It is believed this is the site where the Hyborian invasion first broke south against the hated towers of Aquilonia and Stygia. Today, the site is barren, sparsely populated, and dotted with cairns to the fallen. It is often used as a meeting site between opposing parties, as the people of Hanumar have all tacitly agreed that the killing fields have seen enough blood spilled already. They are considered sacred neutral ground, a place where rivals or enemies can safely meet to discuss.
The king has requested your presence, my prince.
It seems our time together is at an end. I hope you have learned something today, my boy. The hated dragon of Nemedia has been our rival for centuries, but they are also one of the pillars of the Western Hyborian world, no less so than our own nation. Their military is strong, their people proud, and their culture vibrant. The clouds of war gather on the horizon between our two peoples yet again, but do not let this trouble you, my prince. Your father shall lead us to victory, as he ever has. As mighty as the dragon is, the lion is mightier still. I wish you well, my boy. Come and see me again soon. I do so enjoy our little chats. Farewell.